Hello everyone. Welcome to the podcast for global payroll enthusiast. My name is Amit Kode. I'm the founder of Envie HR, being with global payroll industry for last 20 plus years. And this podcast is created for to bring the visibility towards global payroll intricacies, challenges, issues, and solution. So today the topic of our global payroll discussion is about flexibility combined with the standardization, and we have a wonderful guest from Netherlands, the country with tulip and iconic windmills. I would like to, he's not only the payroll enthusiast, he's also an extraordinary payroll blogger, speaker, and the champion of payroll and living encyclopedia of global payroll intricacy. I would like to welcome Mr. Max van der Klis Busink, the name which is in sync with innovation, insight, and incredible knowledge on global payroll industry. Welcome to the podcast, Max.
Well, thank you, Amit, for such a wonderful introduction. I'm humbled by your kind words, and it's great that there's another global payroll podcast out there to deliver the passion for payroll that we both share. So, really honored to be a guest to your podcast, Amit.
We are happy to have you on board, Max. Thank you very much for joining our podcast. Max, today's topic is about flexibility combined with standardization. And I think on 16th of Jan, you have put up a blog with some statistics about the overall global payroll standardization and flexibilities. And you are trying to compare some details into it with some stats about countries and localization and stuff. Why don't you quickly run us through that? What exactly you would like to bring it to our viewers?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Amit. So I actually also ran a poll that was closed after I issued that blog, which had a question: do you find flexibility or standardization more important in global payroll? And it kind of underpinned my statement within the blog around standardization and flexibility in global payroll because 60% indicated that both are equally important. And 31% indicated that standardization is most important, and 9% indicated that flexibility on itself is more important. So I think, I've been a global payroll manager for the past 17 years, and now I've joined Payzaar, who delivers the global payroll management platform for international businesses and local and international payroll providers. That I've faced with that ask from corporates and from central teams to say, we need to standardize, we need to scale our operations, right? We need to be much more viable, cost effective, more efficient, and this allows for seamless automation. That was the ask on one end. The ask on the other end was, I want you to be as flexible as possible
Which
to
is
meet
true.
all my local needs and demands, right? And there you sit in the middle as a global payroll manager thinking you have a standardization ask on one hand, you have a flexibility ask on the other hand. And that's the awareness I wanted to raise within the global payroll community through those polls and those blogs. I mean.
Yeah. So I think you gave three options. One is flexibility, one is standardization, and the other one is merger of both, right?
It's both are equally important,
Yep.
yes.
And you got the maximum vote. So this means that our viewers or the people who are working on global payroll will definitely understand the logic of standardization and flexibility. Now, I have a question in this regards that what if one of it misbalance? So, for example, what if standardizations go higher? So, if I refer standardization when it comes to the food industry, for example, McDonald's have amazing standardization in their overall infra, right? So they have the same setup. You go to Europe, you come to India, you go anywhere in APAC, you have the same structure, same the board style and everything. And that's the beauty of having standardization in place when it comes to. But if we need to have flexibility and standardization together, what happens if it disbalance? What happens if standardization is higher or flexibility is higher? What could be the challenging or what could be the issues or the challenges?
Yeah, I think it's a great example. I mean, and actually run a webinar last year for Payzaar that was called "How to Smartly Model Your Payroll to Adapt to Business Dynamics." We had an example about McDonald's, actually what you refer to, because McDonald's, they embodied a transnational model, which meant there is a high global directive, which you could read as a high need for standardization. But there was also local autonomy, which was very high. So there was local control yet integrated into the platform. Because as you rightfully say, the McDonald's experience is this designed to be the same across the world, right?
True.
However, if you would closely look at the menus and the branding, it's actually localized. You would find in the Netherlands a Mac croquette, for instance, which you for sure will not find in other countries,
Yeah.
right? So they've kind of mastered the balance of global standardizations, right? High margins, high levels of efficiency and effectiveness, while still being able to tailor to local needs. And that's something that we also want to have in payrolls. If you look at kind of the more traditional service models out there, where you would have a centralized platform with payroll providers who deliver payroll locally, right? It's commonly referred to as an aggregator model,
Yep.
which is kind of a one size fits all as it was presented years ago. But now, also a lot of customers, at least that come to us, say, well, actually, there is too much standardization in
Hmm.
terms of there's one contract, there is one provider who chooses all my different providers. And I kind of have the analogy that if you have your grocery list, Amit,
Hmm.
and you say on that grocery list, I want 15 apples,
Okay.
but you do not specify which apples you want. And you hand over that list to a middleman, let's call it an aggregator. They will come back with 15 apples, but maybe five will be pink ladies,
Yeah.
five will be Granny Smiths, and five will be L stars,
Yeah.
while you actually only like Granny Smith.
Yep.
Because you've bought apples but not Granny Smith, yes, you have your 15 apples and a standardized process for getting apples, but you're not eating what you want, you're not getting what you want. So you want to combine that standardization with that flexibility to truly be, agile enough as a global payroll operation within the environment that we're currently working, because it's so dynamic. You can't be locked into all kinds of different practices. So that's
True.
kind of my view on it, Amit.
Yeah, and see, I think you actually hold the point very correctly when it comes to the aggregator model. But do you think that when we are working on aggregator model, the overall expectation of having a head count is not a higher one? Because you generally go to an aggregator with where the expectation of the less head count, less cost, less headache, and less compliances or less responsibility or accountability from the organization perspective. But in this case, the overcomplicated standardization is going to impact on the overall delivery by the ICP or by the aggregator model person. It could be anybody, right? And that's why you are saying that it has to have standardization which is in sync with flexibility. Now we'll go to the next question. And when I say standardization is on a higher side, what if the flexibility is on the higher side? What kind of challenges the organizations face?
Yeah, that's a great question. And just coming back on the aggregator model, I think there is a model out there for any business, right? I think it's good that there are different options to choose from, so all the global payroll leaders can choose whatever fits, right, within their model. And what I think in terms of flexibility linked to that model is, especially for the longer tail headcount, you always need more services, right? Yes, you need a payroll, you want to be outsourced, you want to be don't want to be bothered with that long tail of countries, for instance. But you do need much richer services, right?
True.
So you don't just need you to process payroll, you need tax advice, you need legal advice, you might need some contracting or employment
Or a
contracting
new
advice.
hire or a termination registration. It could be anything.
Exactly. So typically what I found as a practitioner is that it's proven to be difficult to get that rich service within a rigid contract of aggregators. So I've always proven that to be difficult. Also, one of the many reasons why I've joined Payzaar to bring back that flexibility. Now, as you mentioned, flexibility alone also brings its challenges. So I once also was a payroll manager at a company where we had all loads of flexibility, right? We had direct contact with everyone. We had direct contracts with all the payroll providers. It worked brilliantly, but it was very difficult to standardize. because there was no technology layer between our own tech environment with HRIS systems, with time and attendance systems, with time tracking, with benefits, with the finance ERPs that we used at the time. And basically, the glue that held it together was Microsoft Excel.
Yeah.
Now, as we all know, that's not a sustainable or scalable solution. So yes, flexible down to the delivery of the local payroll within segments of a different country. It was perfectly aligned. However, as the company was growing and responsibilities grew and the company became listed, right, and had SOX level controls,
Yeah.
it was very difficult to demonstrate a certain level of risk and control maturity within an environment. It was also not scalable because as we kind of grew headcount, grew countries, we also grew our own headcount within the
True.
payroll team.
True.
And that's something that we didn't want to do. So therefore, we lacked the standardization, but we did want to keep the actual flexibility a bit less than the actual flexibility there was. But we did want to kind of keep to recognize the needs of the local teams to be able to bring payrolls in-house if we grew over a certain threshold, but not break the model. We wanted the choice to go regional or maybe local or have clusters of countries. We wanted to choose the best payroll provider to meet our needs, and we wanted it to be our choice, right? That's the flexibility you want. But if you look in terms of standardization, you want to harmonize your process from pre-payroll, run payroll to post-payroll. You want to digitize the workflows and the data flows. So that's kind of the difficulty of having too
Too
much
much of
flexibility.
flexibility. So basically,
Yeah, you max out on scalability.
and you're right. The organization grow. You will have more people in the team, more
Yep.
resources, and everybody is on the different tangent and doing the different practice. That's also a little bit complex. I definitely agree. So over standardization is a challenge. Over flexibility is challenge. Then what's the ideal solution? What do you think the ideal solution should be? Is it only
I
technology or is it only process? What? I mean,
it's good. So I would probably say the ideal technology solution is company specific, but I've kind of rephrased this into one term. We used to say one size fits all, Amit, but to me, the one size fits all is hybrid.
okay.
So let's just acknowledge, similar to like a company, let me lay down a company profile, just like I did in the blog, right? If you have an international business of a fair size, you would most likely have one or two very high headcount countries, right? Your primary countries, your HQ countries, maybe your manufacturing site, your distribution, whatever. That would probably be only, well, what shall I say, 10% of your countries, about 75, maybe even 80% of your population, right? You're not gonna outsource those payrolls just yet, right? Because maybe you're running a payroll in-house. Maybe you have much more high demands in terms of integrations, in terms of process control, because it's just a higher volume payroll. You will then have other countries, maybe some secondary countries or some long tail countries that represent the rest 90% of the countries, but maybe only 25, 20% of the population. Now you have this mix of workforce, right? And different levels of automation you would want. Because I've also managed payrolls, I mean, with one person on it. Right?
Oh, okay.
Finland, one employee. Uzbekistan, two employees. Am I really going to build point-to-point integrations from Workday to a
No,
platform for a one-person payroll? Right?
no.
No, you don't want to do that. So therefore, you need to look smartly at your standardization and think, what's the scope that I'm talking about? What's the business value in terms of efficiency and effectiveness that I'm driving with that standardization? So if you segment your footprint within those primary countries, right? A low percentage of countries, but high percentage of employees. The rest, high percentage of countries, but low percentage of employees. You will find yourself having different needs, right? So you would most likely do either a strategic decision, which some companies do, like payroll, regardless, we outsource,
Okay.
right? We don't want any of this. We want a full BPO, right? And they could contact you and me to help with that, right?
Yeah, of
Uh,
course.
and contact you. But I see that less and less because outsourcing is great. But one of the sayings that I've always had is you don't outsource to save costs. And in the current economic climate, cost is a factor, right? It's a factor. It's always been a factor, but it's becoming more and more at the heart of every business decision. So therefore, if you could make the business case to bring big payroll back in-house, You then find yourself with payrolls in-house,
Mhm.
and you find yourself with payrolls outsourced, right? But you would still want that central piece of technology to make sure the data flows into those payrolls from your HR ecosystem, and the data flows directly into your finance ERPs from that same ecosystem, regardless of the flexibility that you choose to have within how you process payrolls. So you standardize the input flows, you standardize the output flows, and you have the flexibility of choice of your payroll service delivery model within that. So you might want to do the primary countries in-house, you might want to do the longer tail or secondary countries on a regional model, right? You might pick a vendor for EMEA, you might pick a vendor for APAC, and you might pick a vendor for LATAM if you have
Mhm.
your HQ in the US, because then you also don't put your eggs into one basket. So if one underperforms, you could carve them out, and you would have one central piece of technology. Of course, I would advocate the Payzaar platform because we're designed to solve these challenges. But also from a practitioner perspective, I have the scars literally above my eyebrows of managing global payrolls, and you want to find that balance to, as we started off the podcast, adhere to those standardization requests, but also have the flexibility
Yes.
within a affordable cost of operations.
Absolutely. So, so basically, you have started bucketing them, or from a graph perspective, I saw the actual graph in your blog
Oh
as
yeah.
well, higher on flexibility and higher on standardization, and then and on the first quadrant where there is a high flexibility and high standardization, and that's where you are looking Payzaar at, right? With including technology, including process, including people. You just now mentioned a very good example about Uzbekistan or the countries where you have a very less than two digit, or I mean basically less than two
One
digit
digit.
head count.
Yeah.
Yeah, one digit head count. Now, is the organization or is the technology or is your methodology or is your organization as a Payzaar is going to support countries, entities like this, which has a less headcount? And will it also help you for the higher headcount, like a HQ headcount, which you are mentioning, which is a higher headcount? Are they going to
Mhm.
support that as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, so the short answer is yes, right? Within Payzaar, we have the global payroll management platform, but we can also provide payroll services through our partners because the platform is used both by international businesses, as we are describing now, but it's also used by our channel partners who could either be local payroll providers who are very domestically well reversed, but also international payroll providers. So you could either come to us for a platform only because you have all the providers. You could also come to us, hey, I want a platform, but I also actually need payroll services in those countries, right? And what we do is we connect any source data. So we don't just only integrate with, for instance, Workday or SuccessFactors, right? We do those integrations. But as we all know in payroll, I did an article as well on that. We have at least 7+ data sources flowing into payroll. So you want to make sure you have kind of an agnostic data flow approach. And then what we can do is we can translate that type of data into anything that you can then process either within your in-house payroll engine. So of course, we're not the SAP of this world that has an own country payroll engine. However, we make sure that within that whole ecosystem of data, we take the data, transform it into something you can directly process within your in-house payroll engine, and at the same time, some data that you can process directly through the payroll providers that you've either chosen yourself to onboard on the Payzaar platform, or you choose through our partner network with which we cover, I think, 160 plus countries. So you will be
Oh,
hard
okay.
pressed finding a country
That's
that you
impressive.
would not do. But I think what's the trick is compared to an aggregator. An aggregator says, give me a platform, but I choose which
Which
provider you
provider
use.
will be utilized? Yes.
For us, you have choice between your own provider or you can choose a provider from our end. And then you can choose, hey, I just want specific countries where I want a new provider. You could also say, I want a regional provider. You could even, for us, say, utilize our network to have a single global provider. So therefore, I used to say, and still do, Payzaar brings back flexibility and choice in global payroll.
Oh, that's nice. And by the way, I was going to come to you, and we will have another session for your recent blog about G2N. I saw that,
Ah,
and I really liked it the way you have drafted it about importance of having G2N in-house or in like the engine in sync with your inputs and outputs and your formats and your overall compliances. I really liked it, and we will definitely have another session for this. But
great.
what I understood from you is you as Payzaar is supporting flexibility and standardization from one employee to 100 employees, and you have a different modules. One of the module is you have it in your in-house with services, and with services with your in-country partners, your connections into locally spread across the globe with 160 countries. That's wonderful. Now the question comes, and this is a very hard question to because
Oh,
I can tell you that this question you must have heard from all the RFPs before actually going into the RFPs is how much or what will be the percentage of cost saving which can bring the combination of standardization and flexibility with Payza.
yeah,
And I'm sorry for asking this question. I'm not why I want to bring this on table because there will be a lot of discussion which will apparently happen with a lot of organizations, and everybody has their own agenda of letting their services know or let the world know that these are our services. But how
yeah.
much it is going to be cost effective for the end user, the client who are looking for the services like this? Is it a percentage? Is it a flat 50%? Is it only 20% gain? How do you calculate? How you measure it?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Amit, and everybody should look, overall of making a business case for change, right? We see this a lot with our customers and people who come to us who want to make a change in their environment. In the end of the day, someone needs to sign off on a budget to do something, right? And sign a contract, and therefore it should be underpinned by a business case. And there are kind of two main drivers. Some are like non-tangible drivers.
Okay.
Some are tangible drivers, right? And it's always that I find that it's a combination of those drivers that actually make a very good business case. So you would have different perspectives from HR. You would have the perspective from legal. You would have the perspective from finance, and I think all of this kind of boils down to the podcast topic that you just asked around the RFPs. But what I think is good is ask some questions about that business case. So, for instance, what I always start with is what are the existing gaps or issues, and what are the value benefits that the project should offer to the business? So, not just the payroll, but to the business. So, link it to the ultimate business results. And how do the priorities of the decision makers that I've just mentioned from HR or finance, how do their priorities link to that business case? And then, like, what is the anticipated impact and the cost, and of course, the return on investment of the proposed project, which is what you've asked for. But that's only the third question. The first two questions are maybe more important. What's the gaps or issues? What's the value benefits to offer? And how do these stack up to the priorities of the decision makers? Now, then to answer your question, it will depend, right? If you talk to HR, it will be top of mind to maximize investment, for instance, into HCMs, and to make sure there is a great employee experience with 100% accurate pay, with always having a payslip access, because they have a business problem that they're trying to solve is that they have a lot of attrition, or the war for talent, they're not able to differentiate themselves. For finance, it will be a faster financial close with 100% reassurance that there's no financial misstatements. And for audit, it would be scalable processes. And if you look at kind of data points, what we typically see our customers achieve with our platform, they typically are 3 times more productive.
True.
So if you would think of, I always like to think of a payroll FTE ratio to employees paid ratio, right?
Okay.
So if you would, in your current setup, kind of have one FTE paying 500
Employees.
employees, right?
Yeah.
If you deploy our model smartly, you could turn that around to say I have one employee who could manage 1,500.
Ah, okay. It's almost more
Yeah,
than double, basically.
yeah. So it's three
Three
x,
times.
right?
Yeah, 3x.
And of course, this will vary, right? Some countries allow for less of a 3x proportion. Maybe the EMEA countries is more involved, it's a more involved process. But that's kind of where you would eliminate manual activities with a standardized and digitized workflow. So basically do more with the same or less, right? And in terms of the cost of outsourcing, right, it depends on your starting situation. But what we typically see is results from at least 10 to 15% saved on outsourcing due to better deals. Because there's this hypothesis out there that if I ask for a bigger scope of work, right, at a global aggregator group, I will get a better deal.
No, true. But that's not the case. The more the scope, the more the challenges it brings in, and that'll divert your overall focus as well. But that's a valid point. So basically, 10 to 15% is the initial, it could be an initial saving margin potential. There is another saving potential which can actually bring in if we actually have a nice standardized or a nicely combined standard and flexible process. It could bring in lesser overpayments or underpayments,
Exactly.
or you can you will have less penalties and compliance issues, and you're to and fro with the authorities. That's
Yes,
the hidden cost which is never disclosed or never accounted for, but eventually that could be one of the, and the best cost is,
absolutely.
which I personally feel is the cost for the payroll administrator, analyst, reviewer, manager. The more uh, the stress which these entire
Oh,
people
yes.
take at the time of actually delivering payroll, I think if reducing that will actually result into better
Take away
cost.
the stress in global payroll, exactly. And to your point, like we also do some benchmarks, and what we see our clients deliver is payrolls that have at least 75% less errors there through automation, through automated input versus output checks, through various controls, through validating data at the gate before it's being processed and transforming it to something that's needed. And just think about it, right? If you track your error rates, everybody looks after 100% rate. But in reality, right, I've managed teams where we hit 99.9%. It's still a handful of employees who
True,
receive incorrect pay, right?
true.
What if you are at the other end of that pay? So if you can push that out by automating, validating, transforming data inputs, that's something that you could do. And also, what it does is there might sometimes what you refer to as hidden costs. It's also, according to a Deloitte study, there's like 2.5% of payroll leakage in any
Yeah,
global payroll landscape, right?
true.
And if you don't have visibility because you have different payroll models and you don't have a central reporting and no central analytics, you will never be able to spot those anomalies, right? What if you at one point gave someone a deputizing bonus,
Hmm.
but you forgot to delimit it,
Oh,
right? That's a hidden. It happens.
yeah, it
What if there
happens.
is
True.
Yeah, what if there is a lot of overtime utilization, right?
Yeah,
You might want to have a labor arbitrage discussion saying, well,
true.
if we have so many people going into overtime, the risk of them, becoming ill or stressed,
Yeah,
right, or their accidents at work increases, right? That risk keeps on increasing and it will rear its ugly head at some point.
yep.
But also, it might be more cost effective to add two FTEs than having 10 people run overtime against high rates, right? And you kind of reduce that total cost of labor by being flexible to choose the best payroll model to avoid overtime and to avoid all kinds of errors, but also having a central reporting analytics to actually identify those anomalies.
Lovely. So basically, in a summary, I think Payzaar is giving the wonderful solution, cost effective, value added, technology driven, and with bringing stability and standardization and flexibility combined. So I think,
Exactly, and maybe one thing to note, Amit, is that what's also kind of unique is self-service, right? The platform is designed to be self-service for you to be agile to make changes into business needs instead of sending change requests for everything. It's basically you get an iPhone, right? You don't ask the guys over there in Silicon Valley to make a change for you if you want to install a new app,
yeah,
right? You
yeah.
just use it, and you don't even read a manual. Well, think about that in the context of payroll and Payzaar.
Ah, okay, that's nice. That's a nice analogy. So basically, you press a button and all the updates will automatically get updated, is what you're referring to. Lovely.
Self-service.
Lovely, lovely, really nice. So I think we are end. We were actually planned for this for 30 minutes, but I think we are over time. But it is wonderful to have
Passion
you.
for payroll, Amit.
Yeah, wonderful to have you onboarded. So those who would like to be part of this payroll podcast, the name or the series of the podcast is the fact check. This is the fact we recently checked with Max about standardization and flexibility. I'm really thankful to you, Max, for being here, giving your all expertise, sharing your experience. I would ask my viewers to share this podcast with the people who love payroll, who like payroll, who would like to be part of payroll, would like to understand the challenges, problems, and solution. In case if you would like to be part of it, you can write me on info@nvhr. Thank you very much, Max, for being here. And anything last you would like to say before we close the call?
No, thanks, Amit. I think for everyone listening, you've hopefully, when this is issued, went through a great January payroll. And just a big shout out to all the local and global payroll professionals for keeping the world paid. We see you, we value you, and the reason why Amit has this great podcast is to also recognize you. So thanks, payroll, for being you,
Thank you.
and thanks for having me, Amit.
Thank you. Thank you, Max. Bye bye.